lot of the guys that I shoot with on a regular basis can hit a 50-cent piece at 300 yards
Wow.
all day long and with no problem. So, the fact that Trump didn't end up getting taken out, it was definitely the bad luck on the shooter or divine intervention. I lean towards the latter.
Welcome to The Right to Inspire. Journalist and host Sarah Strackhouse has worked at Fox News, the CW, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner cable stations across the country for more than 10 years and is now focused on telling inspiring stories of those dedicated to making change. She's driving the message home that ultimately you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. You have the right to inspire.
Thank you so much for joining us for another season of The Right to Inspire, because you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest, Douglas Gould. He is the ambassador of adventure for Bullets, Beasts, and Bourbon, also the founder and the owner. So no matter what you like, he has something for you. Douglas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. But first, I want to talk a little bit about an extensive law enforcement background. But before we get into that, I do want to show a little bit of a video just so that you can get a taste for what he's going to talk about a little later. So let's go ahead and show that video.
What happens when you mix a trained staff, a closed-off range, curated weapons, and bourbon?
I've never fired a gun before.
No matter what level of skill or enthusiast, we have something special for everyone. Bullets, Beast, and Bourbon. We provide coveted handguns, rifles, and full-auto machine guns, along with a staff of ex-military and SWAT to provide the full experience of firearms in a safe environment. Then, we lock them away. Go into the club and end the experience with top-end bourbons. The perfect gift for yourself or loved one. New pairings every time, and great memories made. Bullets, Beast, and Bourbon.
So that video kind of gives you a breakdown of what Bullets, Beasts, and Bourbon is. But Doug, can you tell us a little bit about first your background, how you got involved with firearms? Because the way you and I met was we were actually, he was my instructor and taught me all about when it comes to safety and firearms and all the things that go along with it.
So I'll take a couple steps back. Next month, September, will be my 50-year anniversary of shooting. Got my first gun when I was 6. My parents gave it to me. I think it was Darwinism. Here, go out, go shoot all day.
Right.
Different world, but it was a little .22 single action. Still have that gun sitting in my gun safe now. Was fortunate. I was in the LA County Sheriff's Academy at age 20 and out on the streets as a police officer right after I turned 21. And I've been shooting all since, but became a range master. And so I was teaching law enforcement to shoot. And after a little over a decade, I got injured, retired out, and got into teaching firearms, but also segued over to the wine world. So I've been teaching, as you said, firearms for about 35 years officially as an instructor.
Wow. Well, and you were in law enforcement in California for 11 years. Remember, we talked a little bit about this. And then in the SWAT side of things for 8 years, especially in a very difficult area, Los Angeles area. I mean, what was that like, especially being part of the SWAT team? That must have been, every day you're going out, and I imagine you're worried.
So worked out of East LA, a city called Baldwin Park, which is in LA County, just outside of the city limits of Los Angeles. And when I started, we were one of the busiest cities in all LA County. I used to tell people, if you come with me on a Friday, Saturday night, I guarantee you'll see someone shot, knifed, or bludgeoned. We had drive-bys where they would do one side of the city, then go back and pay back on the other side. And so super busy, different world as far as it wasn't the beginning of the SWAT teams, but the 90s were different equipment was coming on and different tactics. And now it's completely changed again, especially with 20 plus years of war in the Middle East. Things have changed quite a bit. But yeah, taught a lot about strategy and tactics.
Right. I can imagine. And then what eventually brought you to Dallas?
So I got injured on the job. They retired me out, and I completely flipped the script. Got into real estate, international real estate.
Must have been a little bit slower for you.
So it was very, very different
Yeah.
than being out doing a search warrant at 3 a.m. or
Sure.
something like that. I was talking about someone not closing a sliding glass door. Yes, we'll get your house listed. But the international real estate got me into doing wine tastings, and because I was in California, was huge into wine anyways.
Sure.
But I ended up getting silly, bought a resort in Costa Rica.
Wow.
And was doing week-long wine tastings at the resort. People would come down for the week. They'd do the Costa Rican thing during the day. And then at night, we would do a different dinner paired up with wines from around the world. And then 2008 came, and hey, look, I had a career change again.
Right.
So
Well, you say silly. I say that sounds actually pretty amazing. Not a bad life.
it was really good.
Yeah.
It was a lot of
Definitely a
wonderful,
change.
a whole lot of a change and just
Sure.
a different chapter, which was incredibly exciting. But it taught me a lot about the wine world, and started delving into that, and went to take the sommelier test and got the first level of the sommelier done. And then one thing happened after another, and California just kept going downhill. And I said, okay, I got to escape. This is the Titanic, going to hit an iceberg. And came out to Texas in 2016 and opened a wine bar.
Well, there you go.
So, and started teaching again to other folks on the firearms side.
Yeah. So then when did Bullets, Beasts, and Bourbon actually come to fruition?
So, as I said, in '08, when I lost the resort, timing was bad. This time, timing was good. My business partner bought me out in August of 2019 on the wine bar, and I was just going to go travel the world for a year drinking wine. Went
Wow.
to France for a month, all over the place, then to Spain and Portugal, then back out to California. And came back and was on my way down to Chile and Argentina, had booked my flight. And all of a sudden, this little thing called COVID comes up.
Sure.
And the whole world kind of shuts down, but the shooting range doesn't. Shooting
Right.
range didn't get shut down. So I'd invite friends, hey, let's go shoot. And then someone go, well, I'll throw a brisket on the green egg. And then someone else will go, yeah, we have got unbelievable whiskey collections. So it was nicknamed Bullets, Beast, and Bourbon.
Sure.
And it was just a whole bunch of us that were friends doing it. And that little, Beavis and Butthead light bulb went off above my head. Go, well, gosh, if these guys
This is
like
a
it,
business.
yeah, hey, no one else does this.
Right.
In all candor, I had a lot of wonderful training when I was in law enforcement, but it was a little bit dated because I'd been retired out for a while, and there was a lot of folks that were coming back, either from the Middle East or contemporary law enforcement. So I said, well, I got this skill set, the firearms knowledge. Now I've got this one. Why don't I meld this?
Right.
Amalgamate it into something really fun. And then just started looking for different fun topics and found a whole bunch of ones. And I did it for about 2 years as a beta to see if it had legs, and it turned out that it really does.
Sure. And I think so for people that might not understand exactly what one of your events looks like, can you explain what the Bullets, Beasts, and Bourbon event actually is?
Yeah, so I'll do one that's super popular. It's
Okay.
the John Wick.
Yep.
So I'll do the guns of John Wick. And so we'll have different guns from any one of the 4 movies, and we'll go out to the range, and people will be able to shoot those and try out all these different guns. Sometimes we're doing full automatic, sometimes not. And then afterwards, we get those all locked up, and we go back into the VIP club. And there we'll end up having different whiskeys that were in the movies or tied to it. And of course, we always have Blanton's because Blanton's is John Wick's whiskey.
Sure.
But then we'll do trivia.
And it's a delicious
And
whiskey.
and
Yeah.
it's good whiskey too. Yeah, there is that part. And then we'll end up doing trivia. And so people are like, okay, what year was the car? What make was the car? What was his wife's name?
Right.
What was the dog's? And then whoever wins, they get a blood medallion from John Wick 2,
Very cool.
and as one of them. But it's a camaraderie. So one is the excitement of the shooting, and number 2, afterwards, as I said, we lock all the guns up so they're never in the same place as the alcohol is. Lock them up. And then coming out and being able to try different things. And I also do ones just for ladies. I have one towards the end of this month that is called California Dreaming. And it's all movies based in California with the guns from those movies. Then we stow those up, and we do wines from Napa, Sonoma, Paso Robles, San Ynez, and Lodi are going to be 5 different wine regions.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, now you got my interest.
Well, that's obviously one aspect of your business and what you do. But where you and I got connected was, I think, obviously during COVID, it kind of changed a lot of things for many people, right? And for me, it started to put at the forefront priorities and what I want with my family. And one of those big things, obviously, came to safety, self-defense. That's when I got my handgun license, and that's when I decided, not that I didn't know that much about guns, but I didn't feel comfortable carrying one. I wanted to make sure that even if I did carry, I did it safely. I learned how to practice and use it. I knew what to do in high stress situations, muscle memory, all of those things that you walked me through and taught me. We've been shooting for years now, through all my pregnancies and babies and all the things. So talk a little bit about that instruction, what that looks like, and how you added that educational element to your business.
So because I've been an instructor in my past, it was very natural, and I really enjoy teaching. Number 2, as a father of 3 daughters, and understanding my number 1 responsibility was to raise them to be able to take care of themselves in my absence,
right.
And wanted to. And through that, wanting to help others. So last year, I ended up having almost 650 students for LTC, license to carry.
Wow.
That I had come to my class and was able to. Of those, a lot of them, not a lot, a percentage became private students that I was able to take through. So in reference to my daughters, they all started shooting at age 8. And now they all have their LTCs, and they all conceal carry and that. So we went out to lunch probably about 3 weeks ago. And they always, whenever I come in, they're like, "Hey, do you want to sit here?" or whatever. God, you guys are all carrying, right? And all 3 of them go, "Oh, yeah, well, of course we're all carrying."
Of course, yeah.
So again, taking that and understanding, I truly believe that there is good and evil in this world. And I want to help as many good people be able to protect themselves
Right.
and their family as I can, and to learn how to use a tool. And that's what a firearm is. It's a tool. And part of when I teach, I ask, who should have won the fight between David and Goliath? And people kind of, I don't want to answer, okay, Goliath or David. And I said, Goliath was a walking dead man. He just didn't know it. And I said, David, from the time he was young, started using a sling. And as he grew up, he was protecting his flock against lions and bears. And he got so good that he would be able to get a beast of that size to go away from the flock.
Right.
So when they were in the valley and nobody wanted to fight Goliath, little David steps up and goes, "I got this." And Saul goes, "Here, take my armor." He goes, "Nah, it's going to hinder me. It won't do me any good. I don't need to take it." And he walks out, picks up 5 stones, and the hardness of those stones are just about a 2 off of diamonds in that area. And here's a big, tall guy, maybe 7 foot, and here the guy steps up with a sling, and why? Because David knew what his tool was, he knew what his ability was, and he knew what his limitations were with that tool. That's what a firearm is in the modern day. It is a sling. It is a force multiplier. We're able to reach out and put force. And if we aspire to be like David, to know our tool that well, we can protect ourselves and do it in a safe manner.
Right. Well, and I think that's why, a lot of people are afraid of guns because they don't understand them, or because they don't understand that they can be wielded safely. Or, you see all the regulations coming down through politics, or trying to come down, and all of the offhanded comments saying, "Oh, well, we should ban any semi-automatic or handguns or bump stocks," or, whatever it is. Like, all of these things come down. And I think a lot of the issue is that a lot of people don't actually understand that even a handgun is technically a semi-automatic because it reloads, right?
Correct.
So I think that a lot of it comes from lack of knowledge. And that's why I think that your courses are exceptional, because you can teach all of those little things that people don't understand and make people feel comfortable with their tool. And if they're not, whatever tool they have, they should be, I remember you told me that I had a family member who didn't feel comfortable with having a gun or carrying. And you said, "That's great. What do they use?" And I said, "Well, they have a gel gun. It's a pepper spray gel gun." And you asked me if they had ever used it. And I was like, "Well, no, they've never had to." And you told me they need to buy one separately. They need to learn how it gets used. They need to practice it, and they need to feel comfortable with it. So whether you're talking about guns or something different, I know that you stress feeling comfortable with your tool, safety with your tool. And I thought that was such a huge point that you had brought up in the past.
Yeah. Whatever we decide to do, whether it's just our hands, so we
Right.
go take a karate class or a self-defense class, we are getting knowledge. And then number two is experience. So now we spar or we do A, B, C, or D. So the knowledge is, okay, I read this, I watched this video. And then the next one is going out and working with, and that we become better. It's Kaizen, incremental positive growth daily. I want to be this much better today, this week, this month. Well, in a year, how much better am I with that tool?
Right.
And that's really in the classes. I say, look, don't let today, just because you got your LTC, be your last day of any type of training. You have to continuously train, go back and work, because it's a very perishable skill. If you take time off from shooting, when you come back, they'll be like, oh, I forgot to do this. Or,
It was for me when I got pregnant. You know, obviously you can't
I wasn't
shoot
going to
while
use
you're
any
pregnant.
examples.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, I mean, before I had kids, you know, we were working through all of this stuff, or maybe it was in between my first. Now I can't remember. We were working on all this stuff. I actually want to show a quick video of when you were showing me what it was. You were trying to simulate actually being in the moment, and you put my hands in ice, and then I had to go use my firearm. So let's show this video really quickly.
And what we're simulating is a little bit of lack of nerve connection during nervousness. Good news is you got 20 seconds, so you only have about 40 left.
Oh, good. Getting them.
Let's make sure those hands are all the way down in there. There we go. Yeah, we're at 30 seconds. You're good. So we only got 30 more to go. I don't see the fingers touching the bottom of those cups. Let's see if we get the bottom of that cup. Outstanding. 15 seconds. All right. I'll let you know when we're at the 5 mark.
And I can wipe the wetness off my pants.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we are 5 seconds out. 4, 3, 2, 1, and...
Okay.
That guy's coming. 2 round center.
So in that moment, I remember being so scared, and then I was feeling really confident because every week we were shooting and feeling good. And then I had, a child, and then came back, and I was struggling. I mean, I was definitely outside of the range of where I normally was. So I mean, you're absolutely right. It's perishable.
Yeah, it's very perishable. And a big part of what we do, we call it muscle memory or habit. And if you, under stress, if you have to think about something, it's almost impossible to pull it off because your brain is looking for past reference to go to.
Right.
And if you don't have that muscle memory, all of a sudden your brain goes, well, I'm just going to shut you down while I figure out what to do. And, we've heard of being scared stiff and frozen stiff. And that's what happens under stress. And that was with the ice, trying to show you what an adrenaline dump, because if you get almost in an accident driving a car for a second, and then afterwards your hands are just shaking like crazy.
Yeah.
That is the adrenaline dump, and you don't have the feeling in the hands. And that, so we're trying to replicate that in the environment that we do have to be able to bring you to understand. Yep, I can. And number two is pushing through it. Hey, I can push through this. I have to mentally be focused and keep going and take care of what I have to.
And I know that nothing can perfectly prepare you for whatever that moment is, but I remember in that moment feeling pretty paralyzed.
Yeah, and that's where the experience.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you go through X amount of things, your brain starts having a resource to go, I've seen this before. I will act like this, and that is where people that have done something one time, it's different versus someone that's done it 100. Think of a tennis serve.
Yep.
When you first do it, you think, okay, I'm going to throw the ball up in the air and I'm going to hit it with
Right.
this. Later on, you don't even think about it. The ball goes up, and if you did think about it, you probably wouldn't be able to serve.
Yes.
So very different.
Absolutely. Well, before we switch gears here, I want to make sure that anyone watching this can find you if they are very interested in just learning more about the educational side of things. They want to go to one of your events, or they want to take firearms lessons, whatever it is. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
On the website, bulletsbeastandbourbon.com, and they're able to go on there. It has our events. It has my contact information that's there, and that's going to be the best. And we didn't even go into probably a third of what I'm doing now is corporate events for people that have employees that they want to take out and have something different that's fun, and that's on there too.
Okay, perfect. Great option for people, absolutely. And I know that one of the things that we had talked about earlier, and I was excited for when you were coming on, because we national media right now is obviously talking about the attempted Trump assassination and all that's going on with that. You see all the articles coming out about the Secret Service director stepping down and what that looks like and all of the flubs, if you will, that have happened. So I wanted to break that down with you with someone who actually has knowledge on shooting and locations and sniper aspects of things. So can you tell me, I don't know if you want me, if it's better to talk about this in a broad spectrum, kind of tell me a little bit about your thoughts on what happened. I'll throw it out there for you.
So I'll go from the macro. And, frankly, I get the information from where just about everybody else does, is looking different sources in what they're saying. But I try to look at some of the people that actually worked in the Secret Service and what they're saying, and some people that were contemporary snipers and what they're saying. And I've probably listened to.
And these are people that and
I know, but also even that, but interviews that they've done that are. But I've definitely
trusted sources.
Yeah, correct statement. And just looking at it, I think at worst it was probably one of the most incompetent things that we've seen, at least contemporary. And I don't know, from what some of the people are saying, they say that, no, this has pretty much become SOP, that it's happened multiple times. They just didn't have somebody that was there to shoot. I don't know if you'd heard that on a lot of his other rallies, they didn't even have a counter sniper team.
Wow.
This was one of the first ones that actually had one. So without that team, nobody would have been able to take him out for even that much longer.
Right.
But if you look at it, it's just like either playing a game of chess. You have strategy and tactics. But any situation like that, you have strategy and tactics. And you're going to look, and then you're going to say, okay, what would if I was the shooter, where would I go? And then as somebody that's going to stop that, how do I stop the shooter from going there? And the shooter was about 150 yards, give or take, out. And that's there. But that rooftop was the first place anybody would have looked at. If I can get up there, I have a clear shot all the way through. And not to have had that. And we've heard the excuses, and really.
The slope, I mean, to me, just the sloped roof is the worst one, because there were already Secret Service on another sloped roof.
Which the pitch was far, more extreme than the one that we can't go up there. And just the folks that they had there, you saw it in the videos. There was a lot of people that were absolutely confused, had no clue what they were doing. Right.
And the other aspect of it is, I'm all for women being able to do whatever they put their mind to, being great at, equal opportunity, essentially. But if I'm a 5'7" woman, why would I be covering or trying to protect a 6'4" man? How would you possibly get in front of a bullet coming at his head?
Yeah, even if you're a 5'5" or 5'7" guy, how are you going to do that?
Right.
And Secret Service on a very basic level is a meat shield. They are there to put their body in the way of a bullet coming towards who they're protecting. Well, if you're a foot shorter or close to a foot shorter, you're not going to be able to do that. And it doesn't matter gender one way or the other. But it shouldn't be on the detail. You saw afterwards at the convention, almost every one of those guys was 6 foot something.
I saw the next time he was walking through, every single person was just as tall as him.
So somebody actually looked at it and used good protocol and good tactics and said exactly what we're talking about. It was done the way that it should have been there. Sure. And, kind of to the point on this thing is it was either incompetence or complacency. A lot of times people get complacent, but you can't get complacent in that world. Or at even worse, it was if we leave gaps and something happens, oh gosh, how terrible.
Right.
And my conspiracy mind kind of leads towards the latter at times. And my rational mind says, yeah, maybe not. But the other side looking, there were just so many things that were wrong that at some point in time you have to go, wow, was this by design?
Right. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And obviously information is still coming out, new articles, new assessments, just constantly new information, depending on where you get your news. You're either hearing all of it or you're hearing none of it. So it's just, I wanted to make sure that, your perspective got out there, because I know that you have knowledge on this and, a good source of information. So,
and I think now a large amount of the population no longer trust most of the agencies that have three-letter acronyms anymore in what they say. We watched it with the original director where things like, well, the roof was pitched.
Right.
And she was looking for every excuse not to, and eventually she took responsibility. But now the new director's coming up with, well, I don't know, we'll get you answers. And it's just a stonewall.
Sure.
Let us not address this. Let us not cover it. And so whenever they do come out and say something, like half of us or more don't believe what they're saying anyways.
Right.
That it's the way to try and not take responsibility or to put it onto someone else. From the get-go, they blamed, it's the local law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah, and the local law enforcement, they weren't even at the briefing. Yeah, I mean, again, there's probably 15 different things, like not being at the briefing, not having radio comms that they could talk to each other, not using drones, not having a perimeter that was way outside of line of sight where somebody could shoot. And it goes on and on and on. How does a shooter get a bicycle with a backpack with an AR and is walking around with a rangefinder?
Right.
And so, unless you're playing golf or surveying a road,
Right.
a rangefinder is usually to figure out, okay, how far away and what's the windage and everything else that's going to happen.
Sure.
So it just, after a while, when you see a line item by line item by line item, the total starts adding up to a really, really
Right.
ugly picture.
Well, I guess we'll see as the rest of this year unfolds. It's always interesting during an election year.
I think this one's going to be extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's so much animus on both sides that as it goes forward. And the last thing that within a democracy is when we lose the trust of the election and we no longer believe that it's a righteous election. And I think 2020 had a big impact. And depending on how this one plays out,
Yep.
there can definitely be some very interesting things coming.
Yes, I completely agree. And I know that there's, certain things that you can and cannot say, out loud without kind of being put into cancel culture. But I agree that it will be interesting. I'm very curious to see how things pan out.
Yeah, and even with that, I think that one of the things that we have to start doing is putting more truth out there and saying, hey, if you want to cancel us, then we'll find another 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 that believe in what the message is.
Yep.
And it's just the lunatics have taken over the asylum on so many different levels, and so many people are out of touch with the communities they quote represent.
Right.
And we could do 15 different podcasts on all the different issues.
Yeah. Well, so I guess another question I have for you is advice for people. If they're trying to find a good source of information, if they're trying to learn more about the candidates, I think at this point, people have seen all they need to see about the candidates, but just kind of moving forward, anything you think that people should be keeping in mind?
So within the folks that are in my orbit, my world, I say focus a little more on the micro right now.
Okay.
Build community. If we have a freezing storm and electricity goes out for 2 weeks, or we have a heat wave and something happens, or we let 13 million people walk across the border and a small percentage start doing something very nefarious, are we able to have community to help out? And it's not just, hey, do we have the firearms training, but do we have generators? Do we have solar?
Do we have water?
Do we have water? Yeah. And do we have food? And if we don't, do we have someone within our community that does? Do we have a game plan to talk to our kids, to our parents, to our spouses if the phones went down? And people, well, what do you mean the phones go down?
Well, they already have multiple times,
Exactly.
the SIM card update and all of these other aspects, suddenly the phone goes down and I'm in the middle of driving using my maps and it just kaputs, luckily I kind of knew where I was already, but, these are all things that have already happened. I was pregnant with my first son and that's when that freeze came over and everyone lost power for like 6 days. Luckily, I still had a little bit of electricity because we were on the grid with the hospital. I was printing out instructions for how to give birth at home. So all of these things have already happened. So your advice, is
to kind of, let's call it DEFCON 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, one is that we're just happy we can order food and everything comes
Right.
and just life is good.
Right.
Two is that the power or something goes down. We have a supply chain issue that things aren't being delivered, like, I don't know, toilet
COVID.
paper. Yes, COVID. Toilet paper. And things like that, that all of a sudden we have an issue. To now the grid's down and we don't have
Yeah.
any electricity. Our computers are down, but our spouses or our kids or our loved ones aren't with us. How do we get there? And do we have a plan to be able to say, yeah, you can use a CB radio on this thing. You can use a ham radio to be able to do this. Here's a satellite phone. And then how many gallons of water do we need for 60 days
Right.
or whatever else?
Right.
Start doing that now. And we used to look at preppers. Oh, yeah, they're all crazy wearing aluminum foil on their head. And now it's just, we all know that something's coming.
Yeah.
And whether it's theology and it's revelations that something's coming or it's common sense going, yeah, you can't have a system that hasn't been upgraded and put so much stress on it without it having an issue. Either way, we're still getting to the same place.
Right.
You know, we've taken a different road to Rome, but we're going to Rome.
Well, and the people who don't believe it, it's already happened.
Yeah.
It's already happened
Yeah, well, and
multiple times.
we've just seen the little tiny
Little
glitches,
blips.
and most people have no clue how to get from point A to B without using a cell phone and maps and going,
I
okay.
am slightly most people
So-
in that regard. Yes, there's
And-
only certain places I know how to get to.
And
I've become so complacent. You know, back in the day, before we had Toms, Magellans, all these things, phones, you know, my dad had me traveling around with this big map and like following the roads and, okay, 2 miles, or putting that on my car and then driving, 2.4 miles or whatever it is. But
so in
kids-
California, and when
Yeah.
I started in law enforcement in late 80s, early 90s,
Yeah.
we used something called the Thomas Guide. And
Okay.
it was this book that basically you would go to the street and it'd start flipping. And so, if you had an emergency call, you had to get really good at going through this book to find out where this little street in the middle of LA was that
Right.
you had to go to. And I was out in LA, probably about 5-6 years ago, and I saw a guy with a Thomas Guide on the hood of his car. And I literally stopped and go, hey, I just got to say hi and say, wow.
Right.
I said, I haven't seen anything like this in years.
Right.
And he goes, oh, I still keep it and use it every now and then.
Yeah.
So for us to have a map that would tell us all the different streets, do we know if you're going to have a baby, if you are having some type of thing, what kind of medication do you have stored up, or
Yeah.
what hospital would you go to if your primary doctor, who's all the way on this side of town, isn't available?
Right.
But where's the ER that's close by?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of little things, but they keep adding up,
Yeah.
and they become a big thing.
Yeah.
All the different elements that I've talked about, and we have built such a wonderful system. We have built the Garden of Eden. We can control this temp to 1 degree.
Right.
We can put our music to 1 decibel. At the touch of our finger, 2 million, 3 million songs that we are inundated with. But that can all go down just with one system
Right.
failing. And all of us on our entire lives. And the vast majority of us have no clue what just our grandparents
Yeah.
were able to do, much less our great-grandparents.
Right.
So I would spend time certainly learning the tool of firearms, since I instruct on that. I'm
Right.
huge. But even for myself, I'm spending more time on learning to stop the bleed.
Right.
If somebody end up having a injury, do you have a tourniquet? Do you have gauze? Are you carrying certain things with you to be able to stop that?
Sure.
That's
That's
there.
all great advice, and to focus on the micro in the community. That's great advice.
And one that, let us pray it never happens, but like Narcan. When I was working back in LA, Narcan was just the paramedics had it. Now you can go buy it
Right.
at the drugstore. Like, why would I need that? What happens if somebody accidentally got a hold of something and it was laced with fentanyl? We have
Well, you see about people putting money or something on someone's car, and then you touching it and getting fentanyl
Yeah.
on your hands or whatever it is. Yeah.
And you see the overdoses, and those are overdoses of people that are trying stuff. But there is so much. Again, if somebody had a nefarious intent and they loaded up some aspirin or they loaded up other stuff, and so for $15 we went and bought something to counter that, and we had Narcan in our medical kit, and someone that we loved did have an overdose, we would be able to be the saviors.
Right.
In my Bible study, we often talk about when we ask God to save us. And what are we looking for? We're looking for him to put somebody that has the skill set that happens to be there if we're choking to be able to do the
Right.
Heimlich maneuver, if we're
Right.
bleeding to stop the bleed.
Right.
And I tell people, become that person. Become that person that when someone asks, God save me, that you're able to step into that breach and
that.
do that and build those skills. So that would be as much as the firearm side, build all those other skills because they're probably going to become even more necessary than the firearm itself.
I love it. That's great advice. Doug, I have one final question for you. And I ask this to everyone kind of towards the end of most of our shows. If I knew you better, what would I ask you?
Why do you talk about all the bad stuff but have such a happy attitude on life?
So why do you?
Because I've seen the worst of what we do to each other, but I've seen the best of what we can be. And realizing that this is a gift every day. There's a lot of wonderful people. And although I do think that there's a lot of bad and a lot of evil out there, that the good people can stick together and that this is an absolute gift. It's a gift from God that we are able to enjoy it. And remember how much of a gift it is, that we have all those things that we talked about, but be prepared to protect them. And don't just completely put it in other people's hands to do it.
Right.
I've been surrounded. I've had so many wonderful adventures after the 55 years I've been here, and looking forward to a few more chapters. And when I wake up every day, I'm like, hey, I get to have moments like this, talking to you and talking to a friend and doing that. What a great time!
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. And it's so true. You've had such an incredible experience, and I know you have, 3 beautiful girls and you have your wonderful family. So you've been able to obviously make the best of things, and you always come with an amazing attitude. So that it really, I'm happy you asked that question because that is something I always think about actually.
Oh.
But well, thank you.
Good
Thank
enough.
you so much for joining us, Doug. And can you tell us a little bit about more where to find your information and how people can get a hold of you again?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me at bulletsbeastandbourbon.com, and also can always send me a text at 214-843-3692. I'm always there.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We've loved coming back this season. Don't forget to follow us on The Right to Inspire on all of your socials, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.